The wind howled like a beast outside the tent, sharp ice pellets slamming against the fabric walls. Eli sat alone, wrapped in a thick coat, staring at the flickering heat lamp in the center of the small tent. His hands were cold, even with gloves, and the power core was running low again. He sighed, knowing the storm would last for days on this frozen planet called Vorta-7. Suddenly, a sound broke the rhythm of the storm, a soft knock-no, more like a tap on the tent's outer flap. Eli froze. No one should be out there, not in this kind of storm. He reached for his sidearm, activated the small sensor near the entrance, and waited. Nothing on the scanner, but the knock came again, weaker this time. Like someone was barely strong enough to try. Heart racing. Eli stood up, pulled, opened the flap, and saw something that made him forget the cold for a second. There, half buried in snow, was a figure, small and trembling. Silver blue skin, thin arms, and long dark hair covered in frost. It was an alien girl, barely conscious. She looked up at him with glowing eyes wide with fear, then collapsed into the snow. Eli didn't think, he just moved. He dropped to his knees, pulled her into his arms, and dragged her into the tent. The flap closed behind them, cutting off the storm's scream. He laid her near the heater. Her skin was like ice. He quickly wrapped her in an emergency thermal blanket, then placed a heating patch near her neck, hoping her species worked the same way with body warmth. For a few minutes, she didn't move. Eli watched, not blinking, afraid she might stop breathing. Then, slowly, her fingers twitched. Her chest rose and fell, shallow but steady. Good. He whispered, "You're alive." She opened her eyes. Her pupils were vertical slits, like a cat's, and her gaze jumped around the tent. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came. Just the softest whisper, like static, "I don't understand." "You," Eli said, "you don't have a translator, do you?" She blinked slowly, as if trying to understand him, but didn't speak. She hugged the blanket tighter and looked at the heat lamp like it was magic. Her body still shook from the cold. Eli moved slowly. He opened a ration pack and set some warm nutrient jelly near her. "Eat if you can," he said, pointing, "food." She looked at it, then at him. Her hand reached out slowly, unsure. She took a small bite, then nodded once, almost like a thank you. The storm roared on outside, but inside the tent, there was silence. Eli sat across from her, watching carefully. She didn't seem dangerous, just scared. And something about the way she looked at everything, the heat lamp, the food, even the soft blanket, told him she wasn't used to kindness. Then something strange happened. Eli noticed his power core blinking. It had been at 9% just minutes ago. Now it was rising 10%, 12%, 15%. He frowned and looked at the girl. She was staring at the core with curious eyes, her fingers glowing. Faintly, he saw a pulse move through her arm, almost like static electricity, and the core ticked up again 20%. "You're charging it," he whispered. "Are you energy-based?" She looked at him but said nothing, just pulled her hands close like she'd done something wrong. Eli didn't speak. He didn't want to scare her, but his mind was racing. What kind of species could share or generate energy like that? And more importantly, why was she out there alone? "You shouldn't be here," he said gently. "Not in this storm. Not on this planet without shelter." She looked down, face full of sadness. Then, with her fingertip, she drew something on the blanket. A symbol looked like a sun with a slash through it. Eli didn't understand, but he felt it. This girl was running from something. He didn't ask more, not tonight. She needed warmth and rest, not questions. He handed her a second heating patch, and she placed it near her chest, sighing with relief. As the storm screamed outside, inside the tent, a quiet connection formed. A human and an alien girl, strangers. In a frozen world, each with secrets, but both alive, Eli leaned back and looked at her again. "Who are you?" he whispered, but she was already asleep, curled near the heat lamp like a lost child, and he knew whatever happened next. His life had just changed forever. The storm outside had calmed by morning, but the cold still wrapped around the land. Like a silent curse, Eli unzipped the tent flap slightly, letting in a thin line of pale light. Snow covered everything, smooth and untouched. Not a single footprint in sight. Inside, the heater still hummed gently, and beside it, the alien girl slept curled up in a tight ball. Her thin arms wrapped around the blanket like it was the only safe thing in the world. Her skin looked less pale now, but her breathing was still shallow, like someone who had run too far. For too long, Eli moved quietly, boiling water over a small thermal unit and preparing a protein drink. As the soft scent of warming liquid filled the tent, the girl stirred, her eyes opened slowly, glowing faintly in the half-light. When she saw Eli, she didn't flinch this time. Instead, she sat up slowly and blinked. "Morning," Eli said softly. Keeping his tone calm, he didn't want to scare her. "You're safe. It's okay." She didn't answer, but she watched him closely. Every movement he made, her eyes followed. He handed her the steaming cup, holding it out with both hands to show he meant no harm. She hesitated, then reached out. Her fingers brushed against his. And again that soft pulse passed through her skin. This time it didn't charge anything. It felt like warmth. She drank slowly, her hands shaking just a little when she finished. She carefully placed the cup down exactly where Eli had picked it up from. It was a small thing, but it made him smile. "You're not just quiet," he said. "You're observant." She tilted her head, not understanding the words. But reacting to his tone, she mimicked his smile, just a little. Like a child learning what that gesture meant. Eli tapped on his wrist communicator and projected a few symbols in the universal sign language. Basic words and phrases for off-world travelers. He pointed at himself. "Human? My name's Eli." Then he pointed at her, raising an eyebrow. "You?" She stared at the symbols, then looked down at her hands. After a moment, she traced something on the ground, lines and curves that glowed briefly. A name perhaps, but in her language beautiful, but unreadable to him. Eli smiled anyway. "Nice to meet you, mystery girl." Over the next hour, he noticed how she moved, soft, careful, almost like she was trying not to disturb the air around her. She didn't speak, but she responded with actions. When he pointed at the ration pack, she took just one piece. When he offered her another blanket, she shook her head and pushed it toward him. She understood sharing, respect, and limits, things many species didn't. When he powered up his data pad, she tensed, her eyes narrowed, and she leaned back slightly, hands clutching the blanket tighter. Eli noticed immediately and turned the screen off. "It's okay," he said gently. "Not a weapon, just data." But she didn't relax until the device was out of sight. That reaction meant something. He made a mental note. Someone had used tech against her. Probably recently. As the day passed, Eli set up solar chargers outside the tent to collect what little energy they could. The girl followed him just to the entrance. Watching the sky, her face looked sad, not because of the cold, but something deeper. Like she missed someone or somewhere. That evening, as they shared another quiet meal, she surprised him. She pointed at the power cell beside the heater, then at herself, then slowly placed her hand on the cell. It blinked once, charging. "Wait, you want to help?" he asked. She nodded slowly, just once, like it took effort to make that choice. Eli watched as the cell's power level rose again. Bit by bit, her hand glowed, her veins lighting up like rivers of light under her skin, but her face tensed, and When she pulled away, she looked weaker. "You shouldn't do that," he said, frowning. "It drains you, doesn't it?" She didn't respond, but the way she sat back and held her side told him everything. Eli moved to offer water, but she waved him off, like she was fine. He sat beside her, thinking, why would someone with the power to charge energy cores be out here alone, freezing, hunted, silent? "You're hiding," he said aloud, "but from who?" She looked at him then, really looked, like she was deciding something, slowly. She reached up and touched the side of his head, not with force, just a light brush of her fingers. Suddenly, a flash filled his mind. Image's emotions, too quick to understand. A starship exploding, hands reaching through fire, voices shouting in a language he couldn't hear, and her face, terrified, running. Then it was gone. She pulled her hand away and turned her face, ashamed. Eli touched his forehead, breathing hard. "You showed me," he whispered. "You can share memories." She gave a small nod, eyes shining with something close to sorrow. Eli didn't ask more, not yet. He just placed his hand near hers, not touching, but close enough that she could feel the warmth. "We'll figure it out," he said. "You're not alone anymore." She didn't speak, but her fingers relaxed, her shoulders eased, and for the first time, she looked at the tent, not as a cage but as shelter. Outside, the snow began to fall again, soft and quiet, but inside the tent, something new had begun, a silent trust between two souls from different stars. The next morning began to quiet. The storm had finally passed. But Eli felt a strange stillness in the air, not peaceful, but tense. Like the world was holding its breath, he stepped out of the tent for just a moment, the cold biting into his face. Snow stretched far in every direction, glittering under a weak sun, untouched and pure. But that purity didn't last long. Tracks. Eli spotted them to the east, large. Heavy boots, too heavy to be his own, too clean to be old. They weren't there yesterday. He crouched, heart thumping. He followed the prints with his eyes. They came from the hills, circled around the supply crates, and ended just outside his tent. Whoever it was, they had stood there, listening, watching, and then they walked away. Eli turned quickly and zipped the tent flap shut. Inside, the alien girl was awake. Her glowing eyes looked at him with quiet fear, as if she already knew. "We have visitors," he said softly, reaching for his old pulse rifle. "And they're not friendly." She sat up straight, her body tense. Then she moved quickly to the corner of the tent. Pulling one of the cargo boxes aside, her hands danced over the surface, and the hidden latch opened. She climbed inside and pulled the lid over her. It sealed with a soft hiss. Eli stared in shock. "You've done this before?" he whispered. A moment later, a loud voice echoed outside, mechanical and cold. "Human, step out of the tent. We are conducting a scan. Cooperate, and you will not be harmed." Eli cursed under his breath, adjusted his coat, and stepped outside. His eyes met three figures standing in the snow. Armored head to toe, their helmets were insect-like. Their suits gray with a red insignia, one he didn't recognize. They were not from any race he'd dealt with before. "We are tracking a fugitive," the lead figure said. "A traitor to her kind. Have you seen anyone unusual?" Female, small build, glowing skin. Eli kept his face neutral. "Just me here," he said. "No one comes this far north. The storm nearly killed me." The figure raised a scanner. A red light flashed over Eli's body. The device beeped once, then fell silent. No sign of alien energy, the soldier said to the others. Eli kept his heart calm, but inside he was shaking. He looked directly at the helmet of the lead figure. "You should check the southern cliffs. More caves there. Easy place to hide." The figure stared at him for a long moment, then nodded once. "We will return, keep this place empty, or face destruction." They turned and walked away, their heavy boots crunching the snow. One of them looked back, scanning the tent again. Then they disappeared into the frost. Eli waited until their sounds vanished before running back into the tent. He unlatched the box and lifted the lid. The girl inside was curled tight, barely breathing. Her skin had dimmed, veins dull and colorless. "It's okay," he said, lifting her out gently. "They're gone for now." She didn't speak, but she leaned against him, weak, exhausted. Her fingers twitched, and then she pressed them against his forehead again. More flashes entered his mind. Quicker now. A grand hall, a throne made of crystal, warriors bowing to her, then explosions. Shouting, chains, her body being dragged, burned symbols seared into her back. She had escaped with nothing but her name. Eli pulled away, breathing hard, his voice cracked. "They're not just chasing you. They want to erase you." She nodded, slowly, eyes shimmering with held-back tears. "You're royalty," Eli said, "but you're also a prisoner to them." She didn't deny it. Eli sat beside her, thinking fast. If those hunters came back with a stronger scan, they'd find her, and if they found her, they'd kill her hand, maybe him too. "We need to leave," he whispered, "tonight, before they come back with more." The girl looked at him, tired but hopeful, like she was waiting for someone to say those exact words. Slowly, she reached into the folds of her tattered cloak and pulled out a shard crystal. Glowing faintly, she handed it to Eli. "What is this?" he asked. She pointed at the mountains in the distance, then at the shard. Then she drew a line in the air map. Her destination, her only hope. Eli stared at the shard, then at her. "You knew where to go all along," he said, "but you couldn't make it alone." She nodded once. Eli smiled faintly. "Well, lucky for you, I hate being alone." That night, while the cold wind whispered through the snow, Eli packed their supplies and made sure the heating cells were full. The alien girl stood beside him, now wearing one of his spare jackets, oversized but warm. Her glowing eyes scanned the horizon, focused and calm. They didn't speak much. There was no need. Their steps would speak for them. Their silence meant survival as they walked into the darkness. The power shard pulsed in Eli's hand, and behind them, the hunters returned to an empty tent. The chase had begun. The cold never left 4 to 7. But deep in the hidden valleys between jagged ice cliffs, the wind was silent. Eli and the alien girl had walked for hours through snow so deep it reached his knees. The path was hard, but she moved like she'd been here before, sharp. Steps light, like she knew where danger lived in the frost. They stopped at the edge of a frozen river. Eli's breath fogged in the air. He knelt to scan for thin ice. While the girl sat on a rock, pulling her jacket tight, she looked tired. More than he'd seen before, her glow had dimmed again. "You okay?" Eli asked. Walking toward her, she nodded once, but didn't meet his eyes. That's when he saw it, her back shaking slightly, her hands gripping the edge of the rock. "Cold?" he asked, but she didn't reply. Eli knelt beside her and carefully lifted the back of the jacket to check the heating patch he'd placed earlier. That's when his heart dropped, etched into her back scars. Not fresh, but deep, burned in long ago. The marks formed 3 strange symbols, charred into her skin with brutal precision. He didn't need to understand the language to know what they meant: pain, punishment, and exile. She froze when she felt him see it. Her body tensed, her shoulders curled forward like she was trying to disappear. "No," Eli whispered, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Don't hide." She looked at him, eyes wide with shame. Her lip trembled as if she wanted to say something but couldn't. And then, slowly, she pulled the jacket off her shoulders and sat still, letting him see the full truth. Each scar pulsed, faintly, the edges still glowing after all this time. The largest one resembled a royal crest, broken in half. The second was a symbol for silence. The third a brand no one should carry. Traitor. Eli had never felt rage like this, not even in the worst wars he'd fought. Someone had taken a young girl, a royal, and turned her into a hunted ghost. He took a deep breath, then pulled out a thermal cloth and began carefully covering the scars. His voice low, gentle. They don't define you. You hear me? These marks. They're not who you are. Her eyes welled with tears. She turned her face away, but her hands gripped his sleeve. Not letting go, for the first time, she tried to. Speak. Her voice cracked like dry wind. Name. Is Kailari? Eli froze. He looked into her eyes, stunned. You spoke? She nodded. Small and slow, then repeated, Kailari. Eli smiled. Kailari, that's a beautiful name. She smiled too. Just a little. It was weak, but real. Later. That night, they made a small camp under the frozen ledge of a cliff. Eli started a quiet fire using low-energy cells, shielding the light with thermal blankets. Kailari sat near him, watching the flames with wide, thoughtful eyes. Why you? Alone? Eli finally asked. Where's your people? Kailari looked down, then reached for the crystal shard around her neck. She placed it between them and activated it. The shard projected a small, glowing image, tiny figures of her race bowing in a hall. Then chaos, fire, chains. Her face appeared in the image, young, proud, wearing a royal robe. Then came betrayal. A tall alien, her uncle, perhaps ripping the crown from her head. Branding her as the hall turned against her, she was dragged. Away in chains, thrown into a black ship, and then silence. The image faded. And Kailari looked away. Eli's hands were fists now. His voice was tight. You're the true heir, aren't you? She gave the smallest nod, and your family betrayed you. Called you a traitor so they could take the throne. Another nod. Eli looked up at the stars. Burning through the frozen sky, they're not just hunting you to kill you, he said. They want to erase the truth that you ever existed. Kailar's lip trembled again. She pointed to the crystal shard, then to the stars. There. Hope. Eli stared at the shard. That signal you sent when we met, it wasn't a distress beacon. It was a key, wasn't it? A message to the loyal few. She looked at him, eyes filled with something rare trust. We'll get there. Eli promised. I'll take you to whoever's still loyal to you. And we'll make sure your uncle doesn't erase history. Kailari leaned against him, her body light, her energy faint but warm. And in that moment, Eli realized something strange. He wasn't just protecting her. He was part of something bigger now, something ancient and dangerous, but right. She wasn't a burden. She was a spark waiting to become a star again, and he was going to help her shine. The dead zone was exactly what its name promised. A stretch of lifeless land between the last outposts of Vorta 7 and the Forbidden Ridge known as Silent Divide. It was a no-fly zone, a dead come zone, and most of all a death zone for anyone foolish enough to cross it. That's where Eli and Kailari had to go. The signal in Kailari's crystal shard pointed directly into it. She said only one word when she looked at the map. Safe. Eli didn't argue. He just tightened his coat, packed the last of the power cells, and looked once more at the cold trail behind them. The hunters hadn't returned yet, but that wouldn't last long. One of the scanners would eventually catch a trace of Kailari's energy. And when they did, fire would follow. The snow underfoot turned harder as they entered the dead zone. The white shimmer of ice slowly faded into dull gray, and the air grew still too still. Even the wind didn't bother this place. There were no sounds, no animals, not even broken rocks, just flat silence. Kailari's glow dimmed even more here. She moved slower. Like something was pulling her down. Eli noticed it quickly. "Does this place hurt you?" he asked. Kailari nodded slightly. "Drain. Energy," she said weakly. Her words were getting better, but her strength was not. Eli took her arm gently. "Lean on me." They walked like that for hours, her limping. Him steady, always checking the horizon. The map on his device showed a mark in the middle of the dead zone, an old ruin, maybe once a ship, now buried halfway in frozen sand. That's where the shard was leading them. As the sun dipped behind the mountain shadows, Eli spotted the shape in the distance, half sunken. Wide and black against the snow, it looked like a broken claw, fingers pointing to the stars. "That's it," he whispered. "Come on, almost there." But Kailari stopped. Her eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. She pointed to the sky, 3 red dots blinking through the clouds. "Ships, they've been spotted." Eli cursed under his breath. "We don't have time to run." "We go in." They rushed forward, the snow crunching under Eli's boots. Kailari stumbled twice, and each time he picked her up without slowing as they reached the ruins. The ground opened below, stairs leading deep under the surface. Long. Buried by time, inside was darkness. No heat, no light, only cold metal and silence. Eli switched on his light, and Kailari held up the shard. The moment it glowed, the walls answered, symbols lit up on both sides of the tunnel, humming softly like a sleeping machine waking up. Eli looked around in awe. "This place isn't just a ruin," he said. "It's alive." Kailari touched one of the walls. It responded, opening a small door. Inside was a control room, more what was left of it. Dust and frost covered everything, but the energy from the shard connected to a round pedestal in the center. She placed it in the pedestal and collapsed. Eli caught her before she hit the floor. "Kailari, stay with me," he said. Shaking her gently, the shard pulsed blue, then green, then white. Lights flickered through the room, and then a deep, ancient voice echoed in an alien language. Kyler's eyes opened slowly. She smiled weakly. "They hear me." Outside, the hunter ships landed. Snow kicked up in waves as armored troops began scanning the area. One of them raised a device. Kalari's signal was right beneath their feet. They started moving in. Eli knew time was up. He looked at Kalari. "What do we do?" Kailari reached toward the pedestal, her hands trembling. She whispered something in her language, and a wave of energy shot through the chamber so fast Eli felt it in his bones. The ruins groaned, the walls shifted, and hidden mechanisms activated. Metal doors sealing behind them, thick and glowing, one by one. The entrance passages began closing. Above them, the soldiers rushed forward, but each tunnel they entered collapsed or sealed shut, trapping them out. Eli helped Kailari sit up. "Did you just lock us in?" Kailari shook her head. "Locked them out," she whispered, then smiled faintly. "This place." Loyal Eli sat beside her, his body shaking from cold and adrenaline. He looked at the pedestal, where the shard now floated, beaming a signal out into the stars. It wasn't a cry for help anymore. It was a call to someone who remembered the true air. "Is someone coming?" Eli asked. Kailari nodded slowly. "Yes, old guard. My mother's allies." Eli exhaled deeply. "Then we just need to hold out." She leaned against him again, whispering softly, "You brought me here when no one else would." He looked down at her. "You trusted me when no one else could." And deep in that hidden ruin, surrounded by silence, warmth began to return, not from heaters or machines, but from a bond now unbreakable. The dead zone had tried to drain them, but together they had brought life into it again. The ruin was quiet again for 2 days. Eli and Kailari rested inside the ancient chamber. The walls still glowed faintly with energy from the shard, keeping the space warm enough to survive. They rationed food, shared silence, and slept in turns, listening for signs that the hunters were still near, but they didn't come. It was too quiet. That made Eli uneasy. They didn't give up, he said, checking the sealed door again. They're waiting, watching. Kailari sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the shard as it floated above the pedestal. Her glow had returned, soft but steady. Her breathing was no longer shallow, and color had returned to her skin, but her eyes were troubled. I did something, she whispered suddenly. Eli turned. What do you mean? Kailari looked up, her hands trembling slightly. The message I sent wasn't meant for everyone. Eli's eyes narrowed. What kind of message? She reached out and placed her fingers on the pedestal again. A new image appeared in the air this time, more detailed. The shard had sent a pulse across the stars. A signal layered in royal frequency. It was supposed to reach only those loyal to her bloodline. But something was wrong. A second signal glowed red, intercepted, then echoed outward in a corrupted form. It had been hijacked. Someone else heard it, she whispered. Someone worse. Eli stepped forward. Watching the replay in the air, his heart sank as he saw the symbol stamped on the corrupted message, 3 blades forming a circle. Blood red. Who are they? He asked. Kailari's voice cracked. Shadow Court exiles from the outer systems. They want the throne too, but not to lead. They want to burn everything. Eli cursed under his breath. So now we're not just hiding from your uncle's hunters. We've got warlords heading straight to us. Kailari nodded. They will come fast. They always do. Eli paced the room, thinking hard. Can this place defend us? Kailari shook her head. Too old. It was not made for war. It was made for memory. It is sacred, not strong. Eli stared at the ceiling, where dust and time had faded what once looked like stars. We need a plan, he said. If those monsters get here, they'll tear this place apart, and us with it. Just then, the pedestal pulsed again. A voice echoed through the room, soft. Female, alien, but full of power. Kailari's eyes widened in shock. That's Commander Valessa, she whispered. My mother's first blade. Eli listened as the voice played. Double quotes, ... to the true heir. If this message reaches you, know that your call has been heard. The old guard rides once more. Hold your ground. Hold your breath. We are coming. Kailari's hands covered her mouth, her eyes filled with tears. She's alive, she whispered. I thought all of them were gone. Eli smiled. You're not alone anymore. But Kailari's face didn't relax. Instead, she turned toward the exit. They will reach before she does. Eli knew she was right. The Shadow Court wouldn't wait. They would come fast, brutal, and without mercy. He walked to his bag and pulled out his last Defensin Old Terran proximity mine. Rusted, but still functional. It's not much, he said, but it might buy us time. Kailari stood beside him. I can help, she said. My power. I can amplify it. Eli shook his head. It nearly killed you last time. She looked at him, firm now. And if we do nothing, it will kill everything. Together, they placed the mine at the last open tunnel. Kailari touched it gently, her fingers glowing bright. The mine pulsed, its range extending 3 times wider than before. Eli blinked. You just turned this thing into a small sun. Kailari smiled faintly. Let them walk into light. That night, the sky outside the ruins lit up with flashes. Dark shapes moved through the clouds, sharp, violent, and fast. The Shadow Court had arrived. From inside, Eli watched on the scanner. He counted 6 ships, each carrying more soldiers than he had bullets. They're coming straight for us, he said. Kailari closed her eyes, touching the shard again. This time she spoke with strength, her words echoing through the chamber. Let memory awaken. The walls responded. Suddenly, old lights activated, symbols lit up across the floor, and a hidden door opened beneath them. Revealing a small chamber glowing gold, Eli looked inside. Stunned, "What is this?" Kylari stepped forward, her voice soft, "A gift from my ancestors." A last shelter. As they moved inside, the outer ruins shook. The first shadow ship landed above. Soldiers dropped into the snow, scanners blazing, the moment they crossed. The mine line, the trap Kylar had charged, exploded not in fire, but in blinding light, pure energy ripping through the air, knocking systems offline, stopping hearts without a sound. The shadow court was pushed back for now, inside the golden chamber. Kylari fell to her knees, her body shaking. "I can't do more." Eli knelt beside her, holding her close. "You've done enough. Now we wait for your people." The last light in the pedestal blinked 3 times. A final signal, a location locked, a beacon set, and high above, in the edge of deep space, a fleet began to turn. The golden chamber hummed quietly under the ruins, warm, safe, but heavy with silence. Eli sat near the sleeping Kylari, her head resting on his lap. Her skin no longer glowed bright, but instead flickered gently like a dying candle. She had given too much, her energy, her memories, even her safety outside. The ground shook. The Shadow Court hadn't given up. They returned with more ships, heavier weapons, and fury in their hearts. The explosions above sent cracks through the ancient walls, dust falling with every impact. "We're out of time," Eli whispered, fingers brushing Kylari's hair. "They're going to tear this place apart." Kylari stirred weakly. Her eyes opened, and she tried to sit up, but her strength failed her. "I hear them," she said, voice hoarse. "Their anger so loud." Eli helped her up gently. "Then let them hear us louder." He walked to the pedestal, pulled the shard free, and held it in both hands. "You said this carries your bloodline signal, right?" Kylari nodded slowly, confused. "Yes." "Why?" Eli placed the shard against his chest. "Because maybe it's time they heard something different from a human who isn't afraid of them." The shard pulsed once, reading his DNA. Then again, deeper. Kylari's eyes widened. "You?" "It's linking to you," before she could stop him. Eli touched the control rune on the wall, activating the communication beacon. "This is Eli Grant of Earth." He spoke, loud and firm. "We have your heir, and we are not giving her up." There was silence at first. Then a sharp screech echoed through the chamber, a voice from the Shadow Court breaking into the frequency. "Human," it hissed. "Step aside. This is not your war." Eli stepped closer to the pedestal, voice calm but steady. "That's where you're wrong. This became my war the moment she collapsed in front of my tent. I let her in. I kept her alive, and now she is not just your heir. She is my responsibility." Kylari stared at him, stunned. Her lips trembled, not from weakness, but emotion. No one had ever spoken for her like that, not since she was a child. The shadow voice laughed. "You think you can stop us? We've crushed entire worlds." Eli smiled coldly. "You never crushed Earth. And now I know Weeb, 'cause you've never faced someone like me." A deep hum built in the distance outside the ruins. A new sound, different from the courts. Engines, faster, brighter. Eli rushed to the scanner on the wall. A fleet had entered the sky above Vorta 7, dozens of ships, each flying an ancient symbol Kylari had thought lost forever. The royal crest, unbroken and shining. The old guard had returned. Kylari gasped, tears running down her cheeks. They came. She came. At the center of the formation was a grand vessel, its shape wide like wings spread across the stars. A message came through this time. Calm and noble, to the one who holds the shard, stand tall. We come for the heir. Eli opened the last seal on the chamber door. guiding Kylari out slowly. Her legs trembled, but she walked one step at a time. Like a queen remembering who she was, outside, the sky burned with battle. Shadow Court ships firing at the royal fleet, but this time they were being pushed back. The old guard fought with purpose, not just to win, but to restore what was. Broken, one ship descended toward the ruins, landing in a swirl of snow and light. The ramp dropped, and a tall woman in silver armor stepped out, her face older, scarred, but her eyes sharp as blades. "High Spark," she called, voice shaking. "Kylari." Kylari took one step forward, then fell to her knees. The woman rushed forward, catching her in strong arms. "You survived," she whispered. "By the stars, you survived." Eli stood back, watching quietly. His heart was full, but heavy. He knew this moment wasn't his. He was just a human who opened his tent to a stranger. But then, Kylari turned and reached for him, her voice strong despite her tears. "Don't go," he hesitated. "This is your world, Kylari. You don't need me anymore?" She shook her head, stood with help, and spoke to the commander. "This human gave me life again. I will not walk forward without him." The commander looked at Eli with new eyes, not as a stranger, but as someone important. "Then you walk together," she said. "Both of you, later that day, as the royal fleet chased the Shadow Court into the stars. Eli and Kylari stood on the bridge of the grand vessel, looking down at 47, where it all began. Kylari reached for his hand, her glow now steady and warm. "You didn't just save me, Eli," she said softly. "You saved everything I stand for." Eli squeezed her hand gently. "I just gave you a place to warm up," he said with a smile. "You did the rest," and in that moment, across the galaxy, a new story began, not of power or royalty, but of kindness, trust, and a bond that changed the course of history because one human dared to care, and that was enough to light a new future.